So good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky to be joined by Arvid De Coster of WeGroup. Arvid, how are you doing, sir? You well?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, you're actually in the office today, aren't you? We were just discussing. You're sort of back at it.
We are indeed, and it feels rather strange. I mean, we only allow a couple of people a day to be present here, but a different space is definitely very motivational for everybody, I guess. So
Yeah. No, I think that was the thing. I was quite jealous. I was like, well, what's it like to be with other humans? That must be really, really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so what would be nice to start on is like, can you just give us a really short introduction to the WeGroup and for the guys out there that might not know?
Of course. So WeGroup is a Belgian InsurTech startup that helps insurance providers with increasing efficiency, mainly in their distribution process, and also helps them to make a better connection with their growing group of digital customers. So we are mainly focusing towards intermediaries, such as traditional brokers, agents, as well as MGAs, and what we call third-party insurance distributors. For example, if a car dealer wants to sell an insurance product or a real estate broker, for example, they can do it via our platform. So that's in a nutshell what we are doing today.
Oh, awesome. No, thank you for that. That is the most succinct introduction we've done, which is, and I mean that as a massive compliment. Yeah. Someone once said to me, if something takes too long to kind of explain, then it's you haven't got it right yet. So
that is true. True.
Yeah, that's a well-honed pitch. That's probably a result of all the investment rounds you've had to go through, right?
That is true. We had to talk to a lot of investors in the past few years. As well as like being on stages, WeGroup participated in tons of competitions because people always tell me like, oh, it looks like you guys win like everything there is to win. But the reality is that we win about 10%, but just we subscribe, we compete in so many competitions that it feels like we're winning something every week. So we did literally like thousands of pitches, I guess, over the past 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, the kind of prizes and the competitions piece, because obviously a lot of the time there's money attached and it's all good PR, but I do sit there and like I'm genuinely in awe, because between the kind of fundraising, like investment kind of pitches you need to do and the kind of competition pitches, I'm like, when did these guys get to do the work?
That's a very good question indeed. Yeah, but I do think that when you take the ROI, for example, of award competitions, pitchings, conferences, things like that, for us, it's been very big, right? Because we needed to start off with, for example, business development towards insurance carriers and whatnot. And these companies, they traditionally work with other companies that they trust, right? So obviously, if you're a new startup, a new kid on the block, it's very hard to get into that industry, especially an industry as conservative as insurance, right? Cool. And like the PR that these awards or these competitions generate, it's simply what we needed to actually give the feeling like, all right, these guys, they're really big. I read back in the day when Google started, I don't know if it's actually true, but I love the story that they simply rented one little office space, but they called it Google Office and then the address 2B or something like that, just to give the feeling that they had like 2 or 3 blocks of like Google buildings, which made them feel like a lot bigger, right? So that's basically, I think, what a lot of startups need to do. It's a little bit of fake it till you make it, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the case, and definitely with insurance. I mean, it is very conservative. I think when I started my business 7 years ago, it was hugely important to us to have an office like in the Square Mile in London, because we legitimately had some people go, well, where is your office? And it was a big factor as to whether we were serious insurance people or not. So me and my business partner at the time, Richard, ended up having this like hideous windowless basement office just because it was in the right area. And I'm very glad that the world has changed with that perspective. But no, I think the competitions are important because it's a stamp of quality, right? It's other professional people have looked at your business and said, this is a good business, this is a good idea, this is a good proposition.
Exactly. And everything you do as a startup, as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson, everything is pitching, right? So it's very important that you get it right, that you get the art of delivering a good pitch, whether it is a sales pitch or a pitch to an investor or whatnot, that you get it right. So I think these kind of competitions, they're just the best way to learn everything, right? First of all, well, you are forced to constantly think of like, how am I going to say this? And typically you have like 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatnot. So you don't have a lot of time. But secondly, you also learn a lot from the other startups that you see over there. The competitions that I like most were the ones where it was only for insurtechs or for fintechs, because there we learned to know, okay, how are these other great startups or scale-ups or whatnot doing it. So yeah, it's been a great learning school for us. And obviously today I'm not pitching it as much as I used to do it back in the day, right? Well, obviously competitions due to Corona got a little bit of a change, right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in the early days of a startup, that would be, if somebody always asks me like, what is the main advice that you would give like new startup founders or new entrepreneurs, that's definitely one of the things that I always take away. Like try to talk to as much people as you can about your idea, and preferably, well, on a stage, right? Because then you get heard by way more people. So yeah, it works. It simply works.
Yeah, and you can't beat. I mean, I think it's a hugely important point. You can't beat that sort of direct interaction with people, because I think when you pitch your business, and I find this all the time. I might pitch what I do, and I specialize in insurance in the insurtech market, senior level. I think I've got my pitch nailed, but then someone asks you a question. And that you haven't thought that question, and actually you realize, hang on, the response to that is part of the pitch as well, but I haven't included that, because different audiences have different values and different kind of concerns, so you have to adapt that pitch. So yeah, it's a skill that I think particularly, I mean, I know you've got a sales background, but people coming in without that kind of sales background, it's a hugely important skill to learn for an entrepreneur, I think.
Exactly, that is exactly true. And I do remember that back in I think it was 2018 or something like that, at DIA Munich, which is like one of the major insurtech conferences, I would say. I will probably never forget this moment, because at some point somebody came to me and he said, well, I actually didn't like the platform at all. Like the technology that you were presenting on stage, it felt not really right. It felt like you were doing a lot of things and losing focus, this and that. However, the way how you presented it actually got me interested, and because I felt that you guys were on the right track, I wanted to come here to tell you that I didn't like the proposition, right? So I was like, okay, sure. So yeah, is there anything that you would advise us? We started a conversation. Well, back now, so we're 2 years later, and they are one of our biggest clients. So
Really?
yeah, we just kept in contact, and it went really well actually after that. So yeah, just to give you an idea of what I get out of it apart from the awards, right? So yeah,
I couldn't help thinking when you were saying that. I did a talk on talent attraction for I'm based in Brighton, and there's a really good digital community here, and they had a digital talent conference, and I did this very brief talk, 5 minutes or so, and a person came up afterwards who went, I hate people who work in recruitment. And he was essentially he went, but you might have changed my mind. And then we had this like really funny conversation. And it was just basically, he was ranting about all these things he didn't like about it. And I, what was nice is that I'd kind of already done the pitch of myself. So therefore it was just about kind of overcoming those challenges. But yeah, it really made me laugh. His opening gambit, I hate recruitment. Okay, fine.
That is actually interesting, because obviously it doesn't happen a lot. But the moment that somebody would tell you that, or would tell me like your proposition, it's not interesting, it's not something that I like, at that moment you cool down, because you feel like, okay, there is no more pressure, because I'm not going to sell to this guy anyway. So we can as well have like an open, friendly, at the bar conversation type of thing. And usually that is like when I always tell it to our salespeople, when you lose that pressure, that's really the moment where the magic in sales happen. Like I always tell our salespeople, if you go out on the road, or nowadays digital, obviously not literally on the road, unfortunately, but I always say, like, imagine that the client that you were talking to, that he already bought the product, right? The only thing that you are going to do is actually explain to him or her what he or she bought, and that it's a whole different way of like looking at how to drive your sales process. And that really, well, I'm not going to say that is the main reason why our sales are successful today, but it helps. It definitely helps.
Yeah, that's a good strategy. That's a good strategy. So I wanted to talk about your background very briefly, just on the premise of, do you think you need to come from an insurance background to be successful in the insurtech market, or yeah? I mean, I'll make it simple. Let's start with that because
yeah. Well, the answer is dual, because if you look at my background, I did work in insurance before. However, I started working in insurance as an insurance agent back when I was in university. And my main driver was obviously not because I was so passionate about the insurance industry, right? I just wanted to make some money like every other student does, right? And at that point, I started to get interested, and I learned about the industry and things like that. But at the moment where I decided that, if I look back to the moment where I decided to found WeGroup, for example, if I look back to that moment, I realized that I knew nothing. I had no idea what insurance was really about, how the processes because I was on the distribution side, so I worked with brokers and agents, but I had no idea, for example, how the processes work inside an insurance carrier's in the company, for example, or how their P&L looks like, or how how they make a profit, rather. So I did come from insurance, but to be honest, my knowledge about insurance was not that big. So the first part of my answer would be no, it's definitely not necessary to find an insurtech. However, I do feel now that as we have become a more professional organization, we've grown in 3 years from 3 people in a basement to towards almost 40 people. So rather a fast growth. And I do feel now that like the seniority of some people, that is what we really need. So we came to the point where we said, okay, if we really want to cross the chasm or cross the gap rather, then we need some people who really know how these companies work inside, like in depth, who have experience for years in insurance. But that's definitely not something you need in the beginning. But along the line, you will probably realize, okay, I want those kind of people around me. Rather, it could be as an advisor, it could be as an employee. It doesn't really matter, but you need that experience somewhere on board.
I completely agree. I mean, it's a question I've asked a few people, because I think it's interesting, and I think my conclusion lately has just been, if you don't have it, at some point you're going to need it, whether that be in sales and distribution or networking, or as an advisor to kind of stress test your kind of essentially your hypothesis. Like it's essentially you've got to kind of understand whether it's going to work for you. Because there's a few out there that have kind of worried me, because people have gone down this track of saying, and I might be a bit unfair because I think this is someone's slogan, but like the insurance is broken, and I'm like, I don't think it's broken. I just think it can be better. Exactly. I don't know. Do you think it's broken?
Well, no, definitely. I definitely don't think that it's broken. And I think that catchphrases or one-liners like this are probably present in any industry, right? I mean, I have friends working in logistics. I have friends working in banking. Everything is broken. That's basically what I always hear. But can you improve? Obviously, we can improve. That's obviously why we are doing what we are doing, right? When we started our business, we mainly aimed at, actually, we started off as a B2C company. So we looked at how, because we wanted to do it better, right? We saw some examples. You had Lemonade back then, you had Frenchurance in Germany back then. So those were like the big early stage or early vanguard, I would say, of like the insurtech scene, right? Even before it was called insurtech. And back then we really wanted to change, because that was also what I was thinking. Like I was working inside the insurance industry, and I always said like, okay, we can do it so much better, and everything needs to change, and we need to, raise our arms and stand on the barricade for like the normal people who want reasonable and transparent insurance and whatnot, like all those catchphrases were like the ones that we used. But along the line, you learn that obviously these insurance companies, they're also trying to do the best they can, right? And they want to make happy customers and deliver good user experiences as well. Yet they're not always able to do so because they have legacy systems and because they have processes in place which have been there for over 10 or 20 or even, well, sometimes even 100 years for some insurance carriers, obviously. And change management is very challenging and things like that. So obviously it's not easy. And that's the point where we, as back then still a B2C company, we realized that if you really want to make this difference, if you really want to improve, it's not worth like drawing arms and go to war against these carriers. We actually need to help them. Our technology can make sure that they can improve their services, their business, their P&L, whatnot, in a way that really makes a difference. So yeah, to come back to your question, it's definitely not broken, but it can be improved, and that is what we are trying to achieve over here.
Yeah, and I think exactly your business and the model is exactly kind of where I think it is broken. Like some of the infrastructure is broken, but
exactly,
if you look at if you take insurance as a, I don't know, let's say it's like a city. Well, over time, that infrastructure is not fit for purpose. If you've ever been to London, the tube is over 100 years old. It's not the best tube in the world. Right? there are better underground systems than our system because it's too old now. And I think that's the perfect analogy. I think where the successes appear to be for me and where the real wins are, it's just simply about the infrastructure. The kind of concept of insurance is and the kind of that structure is absolutely robust and it's it's exactly the right structure. And I've been on a bit of a mission lately of the kind of like insurance as a social good, and I can't take credit for that. There's been I think Nigel Walsh has been saying that he wants people to love insurance again, and then I've been speaking to people about sort of sustainability initiatives, and and it's kind of reinvigorated me as like insurance as a social good, for business and people, and I think that's I think it's important to remember. But I wanted to pick up on your kind of pivot from B2C to B2B. Mm-hmm. When did that happen in your journey? Like how early on, and kind of what was the key sort of reason? Did it just get too difficult? Did you just see there's a bigger opportunity? What sort of happened to make that really happen quite quickly for you?
Mm-hmm. We started off in 2017 indeed as a B2C company, and the main idea back then was like to be some sort of a lemonade in Europe, right? So that was basically the idea. We were thinking peer-to-peer, and that is a model that we went towards. That I felt personally drawn to like that kind of model, so I was like, okay, this is really like the big idea. That's what we need to do, But along the line, we realized that first of all, B2C is very capital driven. So you obviously need quite a big bag of cash to actually do the marketing effort to actually buy your way into the market very early on. So that was, the first real challenge that we were facing, where we thought, okay, this actually might not be as easy. It's not that we thought that it would be easy, but still way more challenging than initially expected. Secondly is also the fact that, in the very beginning, I always said, okay, let's make insurance sexy again. That's basically what I said. It aligns a little bit to what you said that Nigel sometimes says. However, at some point you realize that insurance probably never was sexy. So that is simply a different kind of thing, And we also realized that because we were like fully digital, we wanted to be a fully digital carrier. In the beginning, we were not a carrier. That was not the idea. We started off as being a broker ourselves. We wanted to be fully digital, and obviously, the first clients as a company that you make are your friends and your family and the people around you. That's where you start. And I do remember that one of my close friends, he actually had a claim, and he called me, and I was like, yeah, sure. We have built actually a link online where you can file your claim and tell us everything that happens via our platform, which we called Louise, which is now our platform for other intermediaries, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, just have a conversation with Louise. And he was like, yeah, dude, but I'm calling you now. Like, can't you just register my claim? And I went, yeah, but we're very digital, that's the idea. So they were really not ready, as the market was not ready. Even our close friends who would probably do anything because they bought it let's be honest. I mean, they probably didn't have high hopes. You know, I would bet that most of them still had another insurance at another company as well, but still just did it to do us a favor, right? And I was like, if we even can convince these people to like go through the digital flows as we expected, then what are we trying to do with people that we don't know, let alone people that might have a bad experience with it, with insurance in the past, right? So this will be really, really difficult. And we were a little bit like, thinking over like, how can we change this? How can we do it? And actually, almost as by a miracle, at the same point, some insurance brokers, major insurance brokers in the Belgian market, they actually approached them and they said, well, we have been seeing you as some sort of competitor up till now. However, the technology that you provide, that seems to be really interesting. We would like to use that, but not as 100% digital model, but rather a hybrid model in combination with our experience, our expertise that we have in the market for over decades and things like that. Would you be willing to actually white label your product for our services as well? And at that point, you know, one market is clearly not working as it should be working, as it was supposed to work, and on the other hand, there is like a big demand for something else. You know, that's the moment where you realize as a company, okay, this might be interesting to make a pivot right now. And I have to say, when I look back at it, it was 100% the right decision. I mean, we raised our first pre-seed round of 1.5 million only 2 months after our pivot. Our MRR increased, or ARR increased from, well, next to zero to to a couple of thousand, which is obviously the first that you want as a startup. You know, that first 10K, that first 100K, that's where we're aiming for, right? And that went really fast. So in hindsight, yeah, we totally made the good decision. Yet I'm happy that it went the way it went, right? I'm happy that we had to B2C experience first, just to learn the things that we now know and that we can implement in our B2B or B2B2C proposition, if you will.
I was going to ask you, so when you were doing the B2C proposition, did you have any investors at all? Did you have any seed round money then?
Yes and no. We had no professional investors. We did a crowdfunding campaign actually, because we thought, okay, the crowdfunding might actually, for a B2C startup, it's a good way to be known to the public. Yet, well, it's not like you make a new brand of T-shirts, right, or a cool drone or something like that, because you can say, okay, our first 100 crowdfunders, they get like a sample or a free piece or a gift box or whatnot. Well, with insurance, again, it's not that sexy. It's not that you can say, okay, we actually we are willing to pay your premium for a year, and they were like, I don't really care about that, right? So but that is the only fundraising that we actually did. It went good, but we also burned through that money in, I think, 2 or 3 months. So it's not that it made us run a long distance. But we mainly in the beginning, we bootstrapped very long. We did a B2C proposition for about a year, totally bootstrapped. I think it was, for me, both as an entrepreneur, as on a personal level, the most challenging period of my life so far. But I'm only 28, so maybe I'll reconvene in a couple of years. But for now, definitely. But then shortly after our pivot, we had our first business angels aboard in that 1.5 pre-seed rounds, and now recently, about 6 months ago, we raised our real seed round, if you will, or Series A. Well, it depends what country you come from, basically. So we raised another 3 million. So in total, that makes 4.5 million. In Europe, that's a Series A, especially in Belgium. In the US, that's basically a juicy seed round. So, but whatever you want to name it, that's what we did. And now we have like our very first VCs on board, and they obviously help us scale to the next level as well. So
What is the sort of investment scene like in Belgium? Is there much of one? Obviously, I know that you've got some investors on board. And presumably there's not much of an InsurTech scene, but is more broadly a fintech scene?
There definitely is a fintech scene. Belgium does have some very interesting fintechs, mostly on the B2B side. So it's not like we can throw around names like Lemonade or Friendsurance, for example. So our brands would be less known. However, there are definitely some good startups. There are some fintech investors as well. We do have some VCs who focus at technology, and even one fund who specifically goes only for fintech. So we do have that. However, I do feel that Belgium investors are usually way more cautious when they work with startups. There needs to, like, a very early stage seed investor, for example, like you would find in London or in Paris or in the US, for example, that would say, okay, I like your ID, I basically like your face, or I trust your founders team. So yeah, sure, I'm going for that. That is something that you wouldn't really find over here. So how we try to solve that was actually by working with business angels, working with the crowdfunding campaign, as I told you, and looking at a lot of government grants as well. I remember that we had an intern in the early days, and we actually called him the gold digger, because his only task was actually look around in Europe and see where can we basically find free money, right? So we started with government grants in Belgium. Then very early on, we found that there was a very nice grant for Western European companies in Eastern Europe. So the only thing that we needed over there was like a base, like a real physical base. So we basically took a mailbox over there and a seat at the Google campus, like the Google incubator, and that was basically enough for the government in that specific country. I'm not going to now name the country as of today, but if you're hearing this and you're interested, feel free to reach out to me over LinkedIn. But in any case, they gave up to a couple of $100K just to be active there and bring your technology to that country. But we never really had to. We obviously tried to market, right? But it's not like we had the real plan to be internationally expanding that early on. But yeah, so that's how we survived in the early days. But as soon as you cross that first gap, that first chasm in Belgium, let's say that you get towards 25 to 30K of monthly recurring revenue, then all of a sudden there are a lot of opportunities, and then you can really find some VCs who do have a lot of experience both in Belgium, but also with internationalization, because, the thing is, we're a very small country, very small home market. So we are forced as Belgian startups to go abroad very, very fast, right? So that's what they really can help you with. And they're doing a great job for us as well.
What does that mean for talent? Because presumably talent's quite difficult to find in Belgium, because there's not the requisite other businesses to sort of go and take that talent from, presumably.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good question. I do think that there is quite a lot of talent available in Belgium, actually. We're based in Ghent for the specific reason that we're close to a university over here with a lot of good engineers. So we mainly recruit juniors, especially in the early days. We start with students who start with an internship, then go towards some student job, and then eventually they start full-time in our company, which is a great strategy, because these people, they really go for the startup culture. These people could probably make way more money if they go work for a Deloitte or an EY or whatnot, but they really want like the startup culture, so they're interested in that. And the moment that they are becoming available in the market, that they graduate, they already did like a couple of months at WeGroup, so there is no training needed. So all the training happens in like the free internship or almost free internship. So that's actually a very interesting strategy for us. However, as soon as you go towards more senior profiles, if you want to hire more senior people, that becomes challenging. And first of all, because Belgium is probably one of the most expensive countries to hire when it comes to taxes and whatnot. So yeah, that's just our luck. But apart from that, it's harder to find. And maybe it's just the industry. I wouldn't talk about any industry, but everything that has to do with software development, engineering, and insurance, it's actually way harder to find. Whereas if we look at, for example, our recent fundraising round was led by a French fund, and the profiles that they actually brought to us, senior profiles, executive profiles, we were like, where do you find all these people? It almost feels like you have some sort of a basket in the office with like people ready to be incorporated in the companies that you fund, right? But they just find them on the spot. And that's very strange, because if you would tell me, like, how would you do that in Belgium? Only within your market, you can only hire the people that are available right now. I wouldn't even know where to start, honestly.
What does that mean for the future? Does that mean sort of in the longest term that will the headquarters remain in Ghent, or would you potentially look at moving it in the future, do you think?
Well, we try to do as much as we can from Ghent, especially now since everything that has to do with Corona, right? I mean,
Sure.
if you would have asked me 1.5 years ago, I would probably have said, yeah, we're actually looking towards opening an office in Paris, which was on our schedule, by the way. We same for London, for example. We even have officially a mailbox in London at Canary Wharf. That was also one of our investment strategies. Just like you said, we just needed an office when we started our business. We just felt like we needed some foothold in London, right? So because it was like we saw it as the fintech capital. So we basically rented a mailbox just to be able to say that we had an address in London. But no operations were really done. But anyway, that's another story. So yeah.
I've got the same thing, but unfortunately I've got this podcast, which is where I constantly tell people I'm in Brighton, but my mailbox is in London for my business, and it's where I'm registered. So I think I've exposed myself to the scam that I really am. But
I am terribly sorry, but I totally hear you. It's just so yeah. But so in any case, when we look at the future for now, it's different. You know, in the past few months, I always said, like, if I would start a company again in this climate right now, I would probably make it full remote, like everybody working from home or from anywhere in the world. Basically, I do like that idea. So yeah, if you ask me, like, will there be like physical geographical expansion? I really don't have an idea if that would be the plan as of today. But it's also not a barrier anymore. You know, we can perfectly hire somebody in London or in Paris or wherever, you know, as long as they are either in the same time zone or they don't care about the time that they are in. You know, for all I care, you can be in the US. If you're willing to work at night, you know, or talk to our clients during nighttime, well, that's more your problem than mine, basically. I obviously care for your healthcare, but if you have no problem with that, sure. So yeah, I don't think that it's a barrier where we are based. We do try, however, that if we hire new people, because we did almost 15 hires, I think, in the past year during Corona times. We actually try to have everything to get like some sort of a training period where they get acquainted with their colleagues, where if possible they can come to the office. So even if you're living abroad, we recently hired some people in France. They're also going to be here for a couple of weeks just to get acquainted with everything. They do like it as well because our shops are open in Belgium, so they are very happy that they can do so for professional reasons, obviously.
Of course.
But yeah, so we do try to create that feeling, right? That company, because the company culture is really important, and that is something that that today is getting the most challenging for startups, right? Because I told you earlier, people work at a startup because of the atmosphere, and that is what Corona took away from the startups.
Sure.
So that is where it becomes challenging right now for startups. So for us, it's really like, okay, how can we create or recreate this feeling now inside the office? We redecorated the entire office to be more of like a meetup space rather than a working space. We installed an office gym. We have digital programs where like a digital cafe where we come together. We call it digital coffee machine, you know, where people have like breaks in a Discord room. So we try all these different things just to make sure that we can keep that real feeling, although you don't need to be connected to a physical place such as the office in Ghent.
That is the thing. I think that's the massively challenging thing. I mean, there's a couple of things I was thinking about when you were talking, but I think that the key thing is, you know, it's being remote's amazing. Like I you know, like I say, I live in Brighton on the coast, and at lunchtime, do I prefer to be here where I can walk to the seafront and have a nice stroll on the beach than be in the middle of central London working out of an office and then trying to desperately run around the streets in the rain getting an overpriced sandwich. I love being at home, but what I do miss is the camaraderie in the office, the kind of energy of the office, the and you know, and I think it's very difficult, as you say. What startups offer is that kind of unique camaraderie, that kind of sense of togetherness. And it's very difficult. It's the sort of the COVID situation and the remote working makes that really, really hard. I think most businesses are going to go down the route that you've gone down, make it kind of almost like a clubhouse. It's, you know, everyone won't be in every day, but when they are in, it's kind of as much as you can do to kind of create that sense of togetherness. I think that's really important. Exactly. But I just wanted to talk about kind of talent. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with particularly technology talent. Technology talent has always been expensive because it's in demand. So as demand goes up, the price goes up of that talent. But a lot of it's been driven by the demand is in certain locations. So, you know, San Francisco, incredibly expensive place to live. So you have to pay engineers a lot more money. New York's the same. London's the same. Now we've kind of removed one of the barriers, which is saying, well, you can now hire someone, as you say, as long as they're in the time zone. Exactly. But there becomes a kind of bit of a moral question. So do we as companies now go, well, you don't have to live in San Francisco, London, New York, or Ghent, wherever it's expensive, so we can pay you less? Or the other way of looking at it is, I also see it from the point of view of talent should be, you know, a software engineer is paid what a software engineer is worth, and it shouldn't matter where they're working. It's down to them. So, but I think over the fullness of time, I think what this will do is kind of, it will allow the kind of crazy salary sort of rises we've seen to kind of hopefully sort of taper off a little bit. Because if you can go and, I don't know, live in a beach hut in Bali, where your costs are pretty low, and you know, work for a startup in San Francisco, then you probably won't need that $300,000 a year that you were currently getting. So I don't know.
Well, my opinion about that is that I always felt it rather strange or unfair that the place where you live determines how much you make, right?
I agree.
So that is something that I don't fully agree to. That is why, for example, today, obviously, well, I'm very, very honored that you placed Ghent in the series with London, San Francisco, and New York. Totally just, if you ask me. But apart from that, it is, if you look to Belgian standards, it is a more expensive place to live than the countryside or whatever other town. So yeah, it would make sense, you know, if you would say purely based on the idea of we pay people based on where they live, that would make us say as a company, okay, we can actually pay you less. However, we decided not to go down that lane, but to invest the money that is available right now, or that we might not pay in the end, to invest that in like other means. For example, our people, obviously. So our people, they get now they have access to personal training, for example, which could be digital, or which could be a personal trainer at their home to go and work out outdoors. So that is a possibility that we have. We invested in the platform Headspace, which actually helps people towards a better mental health. Basically, helps them to learn how to meditate and things like that. As if you would know me better, you would know that I'm a very big skeptic towards all those things. So the fact that we are actually doing that means a lot, I guess.
I saw the way you said it. There was a slight skepticism, but
there is definitely skepticism. However, I have to say I started it just to if everybody does it, I have to be an example as well, or at least give it a go. And it feels good, you know. It feels better than I expected before, but that's a topic for an entirely different podcast. However, so what I'm trying to say here is I think that we as companies or as entrepreneurs, we should like invest the money in other ways in the people, right? And make sure that they actually perform the best that they can perform, that they feel the best that they can feel. And whether they live in San Francisco or in Bali, living in a penthouse or in a hut, basically, it doesn't really matter to me, you know, as long as they, we should honor their value, right? And that's what I'm trying to say over here.
No, I completely agree. I mean, it's like the conversation, obviously in my role all the time, I'm presenting people for specific roles. And one of the questions that always comes up is, what are they currently earning? And it's not relevant. I mean, luckily in certain states of the US, you're not even allowed to ask, but you know, still traditionally you go, right, what is that person earning? What's the role worth to you as a company? What are you comfortable with? with this person's experience, with this person's skill set, and what they're going to value, they're going to add. Obviously, kind of, I understand why it comes up, because we don't want to waste anyone's time if we're not in the same ballpark as each other. But it's the same conversation. It's like, if it's worth 100,000 euros to you, that role, then the role's 100,000 euros. And it shouldn't matter whether they choose to live in a cheaper area or not. And I think, because that's the thing, you're sort of dictating then where people work. I mean, Brighton, where I live, is an interesting point. It's a very expensive place to live, but there's a big business community. And there's this kind of sense that, we don't pay London money. This is a big conversation. And I said, it's not about London money. It's about, what are the alternatives for this talent? Where can this talent go and work that isn't you? And if that talent can go and work in London, and the salaries are 25% higher, then you're competing against that. It's competing against the alternative. It's irrespective of where you are based. And so, I think it's interesting how that's going to play out. And I'm sort of watching, because a few companies in San Francisco have said, right, we're not going to be San Francisco based anymore, therefore we're going to pay people less. Other companies have just gone, just go work from home, we'll pay you exactly the same. And I'm leaning towards that. I think that's the right way to go. But I'm conscious of your time, so I think we should get towards wrapping things up. But I wanted to ask you kind of, where's WeGroup going now in the next 12 months? No more pivots or at the moment. What's the next 12 months got in store for you?
No, definitely no more pivots. I think that about a year ago we really found our product market fit, right? Whereas today we are steadily growing. Corona helped us a lot, I have to be honest. I always say, like jokingly, that I wouldn't be able to plan it better than the way it happens. Obviously, by now I kind of tired of it, but in the beginning it was really good for us. We grew with about 800% in 2020. So an amazing growth. That is definitely something that we want to continue, and I do know that not every year might be a year like that. It was a very, very strange year, obviously, for everybody, 2020. But first of all, I think that our growth will be horizontally, in a way that we are looking towards other markets. We are now getting more and more customers in the Netherlands, in France. We are looking at other opportunities as well, so that's obviously very interesting. So geographical, horizontal expansion. But on the other hand, also what I would call vertical expansion, in a way that we are, of course, improving our product rather. But sorry. But thanks to improving our product, we actually make sure that we get new verticals. For example, we started off, like I said, with brokers, with agents. Then we ventured a little bit into the MGA space. By now, we also have our enterprise product line, which is basically the same technology, but we aim more at insurance carriers or really big brokers, like the Marshes and the Aons in this world, things like that. And in a third line, and that is something that I really, really believe in, is what I would call third-party insurance vendors. For example, like I said, those car dealers, those real estate brokers. I mean, everyone who basically sells a product that is or a service that is insurable would be in the market for our product, because what we see right now is they start to use our platform to actually help their customers buy insurance, because that's really important, right? When you're going towards a world where you want to buy the insurance the moment that you buy the insured good, or the good that you want to insure. And at the same time, the broker or the agent or the traditional intermediaries, they want to be there the moment that the need is there, right? They don't want to, we went from a world where people had to create needs and then magically bring the solution to the table, right? Back in the day, there was even a saying that people who were in insurance, they sold fear, right? They sold the idea of a risk happening, right? We moved from that towards a world where people they're more criticizing things. They're more educated in a way that when they are in the market for some sort of product, they do way more research, because obviously all the knowledge in the world is available to us. Yes, yet that's the reason why it becomes from creating a need to actually being there when the need is there. So that means that we need an entry for our clients, be it an MGA or a broker or an insurance company, inside the world of those third-party vendors. So we are connecting our clients, our traditional intermediaries or our traditional carriers with these new type of distributors to make sure that everybody can play their role inside the value chain of insurance, and that insurance is always sold at a moment that it's perfect for the person or the company or whatnot that is buying the product. So that is really where we are going in terms of technological or vertical expansion, if you will.
Yeah, interesting. And that brings us on to kind of the embedded insurance model, which is at least another hour's worth of podcast. So but yeah, I mean, it's a great space to be in. I've talked a few times about it's amazing how big the gap is there when you think about, you're buying a car. Example is perfect. So, I've bought a car a couple of times, and I'm a very impulsive individual. So I've just walked past a nice car and went, I don't have one. I bought one, not because I'm particularly rich. It's just I'm that impulsive.
I wasn't judging, so
yeah. But but no one's ever sold me insurance, and I find that amazing. And it's like, well, how have you got the facility to? Because the finance thing is completely embedded. Even like a small car lot will sell you some finance to get the car. But it's stunning to me that it's quite rare to have the facility to give you some insurance, and I find that, mind blowing. It's like it's such an easy win, and there's so many examples of that that you don't get. Whereas I think some of the kind of warranty stuff is embedded and it's almost misplaced. Like whenever I go to an electronics store and I'm buying like a kettle worth like £25 and they're trying to sell me a warranty on it, which is like £3 a month, I'm like, I don't care about that warranty.
Exactly. I have to say, it actually came to me like in the past 2 years. I switched cars and I switched apartments. And like the moment, for example, with the real estate broker, I remember that I signed my contract for my new apartments, and he was like, okay, well, here is some information on like a moving service, So if you and I was like, yeah, but I'm starting from almost zero, So, oh, no problem. We actually have a good partnership with a furniture dealer, and they can help you, and they do interior design and things. So they were like explaining all this to me. And then in the end, he said, well, the only thing that we now need to work out before we can give you the keys is you need to send us the proof of insurance, right? Because it needs to be insured before you. And I was like almost expecting that they would hand me a partner as well. I just wanted to see what would happen. And that was the end of the conversation. So they did nothing. And I was like, if I could, if our platform could bring a broker to the table over here, where this real estate broker could, for example, say, well, here is an iPad, and just type in some of your information. It's not going to take long because he knows everything about my apartment anyway. He knows the volume of the apartment. He knows the area. He knows everything basically that you need to actually calculate the risk, right? The only thing that he basically needs to know is like, well, actually, now I think about it, he knows everything. He even knows my birthday and so he knows everything there is to know. So it would basically only be 2 clicks, and I would be able to have my insurance or get into contacts, if you want to have like a step in between, with somebody who can help me with that, and that actually really makes sense. And it's there for everything. It could be an offline experience like I just described, or like you would have with a selling a car or what have you, but it could as well be an online experience. If we have say travel insurance, for example, the moment that you an interesting idea as well, to think over, okay, well, travel insurance, and I'm not talking like the traditional luggage insurance that you already get when you use Skyscanner or whatnot, but really, for example, well, COVID is a good example. We had a lot of trips that were canceled, obviously. So just the idea, okay, if you make this booking, no worries, here is like a cancellation insurance product or whatnot, like, would you be interested in that? I'm pretty sure a lot of people would actually buy that now, whereas 2 years ago that wouldn't have happened. So yeah, being there, whether it's an offline flow or in an online flow, that's really what our platform needs to do, and where I believe that the market is really going towards.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's an exciting space. But look, Arvid, before we run out of people's patience on our podcast, I think I'm going to wrap it there. But thank you so much for taking the time. I really enjoyed that. And yeah, I'm pleased to see that you guys are sort of trickling back into the office and things are getting back to normal. So I look out for more kind of updates from WeGroup, and yeah, I hope to catch up soon.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Alex.
All right, take care. All the best.
Bye.